Over the past 11 years, some absolutely amazing bases have been built on the oldest Anarchy server in Minecraft. So when I was sent some screenshots of this clock tower a few months ago, I was not that impressed. It looks like someone just took a schematic of Big Ben from the internet and built it in a random snow biome. Why was I supposed to care about this? Well, the two anonymous players that sent me the screenshots told me something that instantly grabbed my attention. There's a reason this sandstone tower looks so out of place in a snow biome, because it was not actually built in survival mode. It was placed here using World Edit, something only an admin should be able to do. Now, in the past decade, there's only one player that's managed to secretly obtain admin powers and use them to place bases onto the server. His name was Tristan. The two anonymous players claim that this tower actually belongs to him, and it's been hiding 1 million blocks away from spawn for the past 7 years. That's a very bold claim. They even provided chat logs of Tristan discussing the tower's existence, but I still wanted to research this topic myself and travel all the way out there to see if it was real. Getting there was not easy, which is why I recorded the entire journey. And I'm glad I did, because some major discoveries were made along the way. Join me today as we uncover the mystery of this illegal clock tower and examine the evidence to see if this was actually placed on 2b2t or if this is all just an elaborate hoax. Before we start our adventure, a huge shout out to Genshin Impact and PlayStation for sponsoring today's video. Genshin Impact is an open world action RPG game available on PlayStation. The game now has 3 different regions for players to explore. Step into a vast magical world now and start your adventure on the continent of Teyvat, where 7 kinds of elemental powers surge. Swiftly strategizing elemental reactions can unleash epic damage in combat. Co-op is unlocked when your adventure rank reaches level 16. Players can explore the world and join dungeon fights in teams of up to 4 players on PlayStation Network. 2 of the most popular characters, Zhongli and Ganyu, are returning and are available to Wish from now until February 14th. Check out version 2.4 by using the link in the description down below on PlayStation. Playing Genshin Impact on PlayStation is an even more immersive experience. You get to enjoy the responsiveness and tactile feel of a physical controller while you're exploring the magical world of Teyvat. And don't forget to let me know who your favorite character is. Thanks again to Genshin Impact and PlayStation for sponsoring today's video. Now then, let's get started. To understand why the claims of this clock tower being placed onto the server are a big deal, I need to give you some backstory. In 2015, a player named Tristan used malicious code to give himself unauthorized root access to the server, effectively giving him admin powers. This gave him the ability to change the physical landscape of the server. Tristan only had access to these powers for a few days, but it was enough time to do some pretty wild things, including duplicating regions near spawn and making an exact replica of one of his bases, which he then placed millions of blocks away. Publicly, these are the only known actions he ever performed involving World Edit, and no other player in the server's history has managed to have that level of access ever since. So a few months ago, 2 anonymous players calling themselves the GS Trading Company came to me with screenshots of this clock tower. The fact that they were using seemingly fake identities was a good indication that the build had gone public in some capacity, which meant destruction would soon follow. When they told me it belonged to Tristan and shared chat logs of him discussing the tower, I knew I had to travel quickly to see it. Despite some initial skepticism on my part, if what they said was true, and it was placed there by Tristan, that meant there could be other builds placed on the server illegally that the public might not be aware of. It would open up many possibilities. I started my journey by logging into one of my base hunting accounts, K-Pop Bob. Luckily, it was already in the same quadrant as the destination, but it was still relatively close to spawn, so I had a lot of traveling to do. Currently, the most efficient way to get around the server is using entity speed hacks while riding a boat in the Nether, so I abandoned my horse and gathered some wood. Once I had a few boats, I hopped into the Nether and wandered towards the nearest highway. Historically, Nether travel used to be far more dangerous, as you were practically forced to use the main highways for long-distance travel. But in recent years, several groups have built a lot of alternative highways and tunnels that allow players to go long distances without using the main axis. Having these options is very useful, and luckily, I found one of these tunnels fairly quickly. It was big enough for a boat, and so for about 20,000 blocks, it was smooth sailing. I was hoping that the tunnel would take me the majority of the distance, but sadly, that was not the case. I had to get back on foot and search for another large tunnel that could fit the boat. The next few hours were spent repeating the cycle of finding a large tunnel, traveling on it until it ended, and then getting on foot to look for another. The farther away from spawn I went, the more I had to utilize open Nether for travel. As I was getting closer to the Clocktower's location, I stumbled upon a nether brick tunnel with a large amount of portals, so I hopped through to see what was on the other side. It was the ruins of a massive base, and after about 30 seconds, I realized where I actually was. These ruins were all that remained of the mega base King's Landing, which was destroyed 7 years ago. Tristan had not only been a member of this base, but he was the one that accidentally leaked its coordinates, which ended with the base's destruction. He was also living here at the time he supposedly had access to admin powers, so having the Clocktower being not too far away in the Nether actually made a lot of sense. With things looking all the more convincing, I hopped back through the portal and made my way to the destination. Once I was close enough, I built a new portal away from any man-made tunnels, which put me a few thousand blocks away from the Clocktower. After flying through some freshly generated chunks, something came into view that I was not expecting. I found myself looking at a giant map art, and connected to it was a massive item stash with pretty much every building block and piece of gear you could imagine. Chests filled to the brim with shulkers, way more than a single person could carry. This had clearly been built recently, but when I looked for signs of who the stash actually belonged to, there were none. It's very possible that this was built by someone that had also been looking for Tristan's build. Or it could have been completely random, and the stash owner had no idea how close they were to a piece of server history. But regardless, it was a pleasant surprise, and I did help myself to some gear refills. Once I had what I needed, I continued on. After flying for only a few hundred blocks, I found myself in a snow biome, and at the foot of the massive Clocktower. So it was true, the build actually was on the server, but it was time to investigate and combine all of the evidence. The first thing I did was document the area surrounding the tower. I began checking underground for any irregularities in the terrain. The tower itself was on a stone platform that seemed to have just been placed over the existing biome. A minor detail I noticed was grass still underneath the platform. If the tower had been built by hand, there's a good chance this grass would have been removed during construction. I also noticed a square patch of dirt directly under the sandstone portion of the Clocktower, which also implies it was pasted directly onto the terrain. Looking at the tower's coordinates, not only is it close to the ruins of King's Landing, a base where Tristan lived in 2015, but it's in the same quadrant as the replica base that he had placed millions of blocks out. It seems very likely that he put this Clocktower here as a test to see if existing builds could be placed on the server, and when he realized it could actually be done, he then proceeded to make one or possibly more replicas of an already existing base. In addition to the info the two anonymous players had provided, seeing this location in person helped reinforce their claims. I was standing on a piece of 2b2t history and was able to document it before its inevitable destruction. The fact that this Clocktower was pasted onto the server with admin powers means there could be other builds out there that we aren't aware of. There are many possibilities, and I can't wait to discover them. If you enjoyed the journey today, make sure to leave a like and hit that subscribe button. Also make sure to follow my socials, so take it easy, Fit Fam, and please stay alive out there.